Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Ready or not, we are live. This is the Unexpected Cosmology, and you guys know my name. My name is Noel. Hold on a second here. I just realized I need to silence Discord, my Discord group, because if I don't, you're going to be hearing the ding, ding, ding all night. There we go. It is muted. All right. Sorry I had to do that live. Anyways, welcome, everybody, and I hope you guys had a good week. I want to thank everybody for making this a weekly tradition in your home. Now, I do want to point out, and I realize here at the Unexpected Cosmology, we have a lot of work to do on, I guess, image building, because we are aside from being a ministry, we're not just a YouTube channel. And I say we here, okay? I'm not talking about like myself in the plural. I'm not like Golem here. I'm talking about my team of individuals here at the Unexpected Cosmology, Rebecca, Pamela, and others, Dawn, and I could go on. One of the things we're doing here is we are putting out books. We are actually, Pamela is translating the Bible. Right now she's doing the Torah from the Paleo Hebrew, and we're publishing that. And so one of the things we're doing here through these Torah portions is we're going through her work. I'm showing you her translation. And, I got a lot of comments from individuals going, Noel, you do great work. I just can't follow. I can't follow these names. The names, and I get it. I understand. But I just thank everyone for their patience who are sticking in here going, yes, this is a Paleo Hebrew translation we're going through. And, we do sell these in our store. I'm not trying to make a buck out of you on this. So you guys can follow along, of course. I show you on the screen so you guys can follow along through some of the tougher translations. Anyways, I hope you all had a good week. It was kind of a strange week for me. I spent 3 days this week at the auto shop. We have one automobile in our household. It's a diesel truck. It's a great truck. Had to do some work on it, and the mechanics couldn't figure it out. I had to take it back 2 more times, so 3 days total. And it felt like a defeat for me. But then I had a really great interview with Karen Wilkinson this week, and also my talk with Adam Fink on Thursday night. That was the first time in our several years of friendship that he actually came by this channel, and it went really well. I think we were both nervous at the beginning, like, how is this going to go down? But I thought the questions were perfectly executed from Michael and Dave. I'm very impressed at how unbiased the questions were. I was a little concerned that they would be biased in my favor, and I asked everyone not to. And they delivered very good questions, half of which I was like, I was really taken back. I'm like, I don't really think about this. I don't know how to answer it. But anyways, hope you guys all enjoy that. Let's get right into this tonight. Medbar, speaking of those translations, those words, numbers from the Paleo Hebrew. We are on week 40 of our Torah portions, numbers 22 through 25, Balak. So let's talk about last week review. And of course, everybody, please hit the like button. It does help. And also have fun in the chat tonight. I'd love to see you guys commenting in the chat. But also, for those of you who aren't watching this live, please just leave a comment below. Just say Shabbat Shalom, or, hey, I enjoyed this tonight, or something like that. The comments really help. So it's important. All right. So last week, hold on, I need a drink of coffee. I charge right into these things. I hit that record button. It's like, go, 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 go. It's like, like the Marines getting out of a moving vehicle in wartime, got to run up the beach. So last week, Paulie came by for a visit and showed some of his original artwork. It was very impressive. So I'm not going to show it to you. You have to go back and review last week's video to see. I actually thought about publishing. I should put it on the website. It was actually a lot of fun. I should ask him to do more drawings, illustrations for us through the Torah portions. I showed you that in the Torah, we see different types of laws categorized as the following. Number 1, commandments. Number 2, judgments. And number 3, statutes or ordinances. So we have 3 different types of categories. Now, my theory on this, as I point out week after week after week, is that like the chicken and the hen and the rooster, the hen and the rooster are both chickens, right? You have chickens, and from those you got hens and roosters. So it looks like there's 3 different types of birds, but it's really just a male and a female the same, right? Well, they're all commands. The judgments and the statutes and ordinances, they're all commands. So the command is like the chicken, and then you got the hen and the rooster, right? So judgments are commands, but they're more of a general natural law. And it's what I think of like Sodom and Gomorrah. They were breaking natural law, they were breaking the judgments, and they were judged accordingly. So my theory is that Yah judges the nations based on more natural law, a morality like don't murder, don't commit adultery. Even an atheist will agree to those as good things. Whereas statutes and ordinances are specific to the Allahayam that you are in a covenant with. So you could join any different religions under different gods, and they're going to have specific statutes and ordinances, which may not line up with natural law, but it is a part of their personality. And so Yahuwah, our Allahayam, the Allahayam of Yasharel, he has a specific personality that is holy and set apart, and those are his statutes and ordinances. Like Passover, that's a statute. Sabbath, that's a statute. Speaking of which, another statute was the red heifer, and I showed you point after point after point, probably at least a dozen or 15 different ideas on how Messiah is a red heifer. Now, I also think in this big debate, is he the red heifer or is he the lamb? I think he's both. I think he's the lamb. I think he's the heifer. And I think he's the dove too. I showed that passage last week. Speaking of which, I think he's the worm. I showed you in Psalms where where Messiah, it's David writing, but he's prophesying Messiah when he sees himself as a worm. And I showed you the connection with the worm and the phoenix. And also the fact that, well, the phoenix is a representation of the resurrection. We read that in First Clement. I showed you fire as a sign of judgment. We know, like the lake of fire, Gehenna, right? That the wicked will be tossed into it and destroyed. But the thing is that everybody, Allahayam, you say God is an all-consuming fire. Everybody has to pass through the fire, even the righteous. And I showed that passage where even the righteous, at the end, when the fire comes down, we're going through it. And it's kind of the test of the phoenix. Are we going to, it's like the test of the cup of jealousy, right? Are we going to be resurrected or not? Are we going to pass through the flames like Abraham and Daniel's three buddies? Or will we be burned up? Will we be turned to chaff? We went through the stone of scone, and of course, specifically because we saw Moshe be very naughty and use his rod to tap on the stone twice, complete contempt. He was not supposed to do that. He did it out of his anger, lack of faith, so on and so forth. For that reason, he was not able to enter the land. And I started with a passage showing you what Paul wrote about how the stone was Messiah, and this stone followed them through the wilderness. So it followed them. Then I went through sources, and I showed why there's good research out there to think that the stone of Scone, which is in Britain, the Westminster Abbey, traditionally when any king or queen is coronated there, that's actually Yaakov's pillow. And of course, Yaakov's pillow goes back to actually Adam and Eve. I didn't show all that, the original altar that they built, that Noah rebuilt, and so on and so forth. I talked about Tepi, the Yehudan princess who was taken by Yirmiyahu, that'd be Jeremiah. And Baruch actually went down into Egypt, went up to Spain, where apparently this Yehudan princess got married. They took her up to Ireland, and they started a new kingdom up there, which I think culminated it was kind of a setup for the coming millennial kingdom, of which I think Britain was ground zero. I've gone over that a lot. I even talked about potential Atlantis Confederacy sites. In the one in Africa, the Eye of the Sahara is a popular one. The one in Spain is not nearly as grand as the one in Africa. They have done radar tests, and they've shown that there is a ringed city down there, right precisely where Plato said it was, on the other side of the Straits of Gibraltar. But I showed that there seems to be similar rings with Tepe's site. And it's interesting that her husband, Yehudim, a Jew, was probably living right there in Spain, where I actually think that might have been Tarshish. I think there is, a lot of people don't agree with that. It might be. Tarshish might have been a sister city to Atlantis. And so the Phoenicians were really into those circular cities. Then we went into the fiery serpents. And of course, the big thing, one of my favorite papers I ever wrote was Wastelands of the Seraphim, where I showed the esoteric quality of dragons in the wilderness and how they're actually seraphim angels. So fiery serpents, and I even connected with Genesis and so on and so forth. You can go back. I'll cover a little bit of that tonight. But then I also looked at another theory, the Thunderbird theory, the big old pterodactyls. Some people speculate, a lot of the young Earth creationists from the 70s, 80s, 90s, that generation, they were really big on this, that the Thunderbirds were the fiery serpents that came in and got them all. I also showed you the basilisks. I showed you historical accounts from historians who talked about these snake-like creatures with wings and like little feet. And we also saw the same thing in Jasher, where Moshe, when he went up against Balaam, he had all these herons go and eat these basilisks, and they actually said that the serpents were flying away and the herons caught them in the air. So that could be something else that's going on. We covered the death of Miriam and Aaron, and of course the death of Og. Now, one of the things I'm going to open with tonight is the idea that Og is we know he's Rephaim, but the idea of walking dead, meaning that he was actually brought up from Bashan, which might be kind of a kingdom like within Sheol. That seems to be kind of an ancient idea, that Bashan was a kind of a entranceway to the kingdom of the dead, and that he was actually brought in by the Canaanites to defend them against the invasion of Yasharel. The reason why I think, one of the added reasons why I think that's such an interesting point of view, and I think that was like Michael Heiser's big thing, is we're going to be seeing the same thing tonight where Balaam is brought in. And so it seems like it failed with Og, so now they're bringing in this other wizard to stop them. And one more thing that we pointed out last week, 2 weeks ago, you guys gave a love offering to Pamela, and you could see right there, it came up to over $2,000 in a couple of days. You guys raised. Incredible, so grateful. She is translating the Bible from Paleo Hebrew into this. An incredible thing that she's doing. I'm really appreciative for you guys' love and helping to support her. So just a quick reminder, you can look at where we are this month at our budget. It's underneath this video, the link to it. And once we meet that goal, let's get that goal met, and then anything increased above that, we are going to pay Pamela. Of course, we cover Rebecca with what's in the budget already. So, all right, let's get right into this. I'm going to read the entire passage before I comment on it. I might stop to make a few comments along the way. And Balak, son of Zippor, observed all that Yasharel has done unto the Amorites, or the Amoriah. And Moab greatly feared the face of the people, for there were many, and Moab loathed the face of the sons of Yasharel. And Moab declared toward the bearded ones of Midian, at this time they shall eat up all this congregation in a circuit round about us, just as the ox licks up the green of the field. So the context here is that they just took out Og, and the big bad, Rephaim, king of the dead, or whatever he was. And they've just, like we're seeing here, kind of similar to Egypt, where Yah took out he judged the different gods, the different Alam of Egypt. Same thing is happening here now, where they're very guardians, their spiritual guardians are being judged and killed, sent to Sheol. And Balak, son of Zippor, Balak of Moab, and Balak would be, in this context, king of Moab at that time. He sent forth messengers towards Balaam, son of Beor, unto Pethor, or Pathu Uraha, which is over against the land of the sons of his people, to call out to him to say, behold, a people have come out from Mitzrayim. Look, they cover the eye of Ha'aratz, they cover the eye of the earth, and they have settled down to dwell in front of me. And at this time, come, I beseech you, curse this people for me, for they are robust, powerful, numerous. On account of this, unless I am able to prevail, that we strike against them, then I shall drive them out of the land. For I know whom you, Barak, is Barak, and whom you curse, he is cursed. So whom, and of course, Pamela doesn't like to use the word bless, but that's what Barak means, right? So whom you bless is blessed, and whom you curse is cursed. And they're speaking here to Balaam. Isn't that incredible that there is, that's obviously true in our lives, that we are little creators, and that everything we do say um, materializes, affects the material world around us. And I've given examples of the classic plant experiment, right? You can go and say very ugly, naughty things to a plant and it will wither up and die. Or you can say beautiful things to it and it will sprout and grow. It's like that with water. You can actually speak to water. And of course, water, our bodies are filled with water. Water is all around us, right? And it will materialize. It will form shapes and patterns according to what we're talking about. So on a much smaller scale, we all have the potential to be Balaam. Now, I should point out that if you noticed the cover card for tonight, you might be wondering, why does Noel have a picture of chess? I showed a picture of kind of an evil-looking dude and a righteous dude playing chess, right? Well, because we're dealing with dualism tonight. And I'm going to be showing you how Moshe and Balaam are not doppelgangers, but they are a checkerboard of duality, light and dark. They are polar opposites, like a balancing act, so to speak. And so you can either be a Moshe or a Balaam, speak righteousness and do righteousness, or speak and do evil. And he spoke toward them, pass the night here tonight, and I will return to you with the word like that which Yahuwah the ever-living will set forth toward me. And the nobles of Moab settled down to dwell with Balaam. And Alahayam came toward Balaam, and he spoke, what reason are these men with you? And Balaam spoke toward Alahayam, Balak, son of Zippor, Balak of Moab, has sent unto me. Behold, the people have come forth from Mitzrayim, and they cover the eye of the earth. Ha'aratz, walk, curse them for me. Hopefully, I will be able to wage a war, devouring them. So this is Allah. This may be the Father here speaking. It may not be Yahuwah. Not really sure. In the exchange between, when Allahayam speaks versus Yahuwah speaks, but it's like he approaches him and like, what are you doing? And he actually gives his plan to Allahayam. And he says, do not you walk with them. You will not curse the people, for they are, Allahayam says, for they are blessed. Barak. And Balaam arose upon daybreak, and he declared toward the nobles of Balak, walk toward your land, for Yahuwah has refused to give me leave to walk with you. And the nobles of Moab stood, and they went toward Balak and said, Balaam refused to walk with us. And Balak gathered together yet again, setting forth nobles greater with a heavier weight of splendor than those previous. And he came toward Balaam, and they said to him, in this manner did Balak, son of Zippor, speak. Do not, I beseech you, be kept back from walking toward me, for I would greatly honor you with a heavy weight of splendor, and all which you speak toward me, thus will I fashion. Now walk, I beseech you. Execrate for me this people. And Balaam lifted up the voice, and he declared conditionally, if Balak should give to me his house filled with silver and gold, I am not able to pass over the mouth of Yahuwah the ever-living, my Alahayah, to fashion anything either small or perhaps mighty. I beseech you, sit down in this place now and also this night, and I will acquire knowledge from what Yahuwah will gather to plan with me. And Alahayam came toward Balaam, and he said to him conditionally, if the man come to call out unto you, rise up, then walk with them, certainly. Though the debar, the word set in order toward you, him you will fashion. And Balaam rose up at daybreak, and he saddled his she-ass, and he went unto the nobles of Moab. And the anger of Alahayam burned because he walked. And Malach Yahuwah took a stand along the pathway as a shaitan or a Satan. And you could see over there in the King James on the left, it says an adversary. And what I kind of wonder if now that I'm thinking about it, I wish I would have done a search in the King James to see how often they say Satan versus adversary. Kind of an interesting thing. So right here, this is where those of you out there listening to this, if you ever have heard of the research that's really the movement. I should say it's more of a movement that's been taken off and sucking a lot of people in, the people who really don't like the Torah. And they will say that, I don't even like to say this, but they will say that Yah is Satan. The God of the Old Testament is actually Satan, that Satan actually brought people through Egypt. He destroyed Egypt. He took them to Mount Sinai. He made the law with the covenants, the Torah, all these things. And that he's leading through the wilderness and brought them into the land. And that, they'll say Jesus, I don't feel bad saying that there, but Jesus came and freed people from Satan, the oppressor, and he created a new religion. And I'm kind of, giving an overview, but this verse right here is where they will nab you. And they're going to bring you in and say, see, it's a confessional. He confessed he's really Satan. The thing is that what I'm going to show you tonight is, when I go through these studies, I'm always like, what should I focus on? And this is another passage where a lot of the, the anti-Paul movement takes off in this passage here with Balaam. And what I want to show you is that there is a duality between Balaam and Moses, and that Moses, being righteous, is the adversary of Balaam, and Balaam, being wicked, is the adversary of Moses. All right. So yes, Yah is an adversary. He is a Satan to wicked people. He is against them. He is opposed to them. He will accuse. He can even accuse them. That's what he can do. And but anyways, we'll be talking more about that tonight. And so this is where kind of Michael Heiser and his research. I know a lot of you don't like Michael Heiser, but I think one thing that he did exceptionally well. We can criticize, people criticize me. We can criticize other people. One thing he did exceptionally well and really taught me was this idea that Satan is a title. Anybody can be a Satan. You can be somebody's Satan. You can accuse somebody. That's a very dangerous ground to be on. But assuming you go and you accuse someone of something, you accuse someone of murder, you accuse them of adultery, you accuse them of lying or cheating or stealing, breaking any of the 10 Commandments, you are their adversary. All right. You are accusing them of something. Now, we don't want to have the spirit of accusation, and so on and so forth. Point made. All right. So Yahuwah is the adversary to Balaam. Understood? He is standing in the pathway as a Satan against him. Continuing reading, and he, Balaam, was carried upon his she-ass, and 2 of his boys were with him. That's really interesting. 2 of his boys. We'll see who his 2 boys are in a little bit. And the she-ass observed Balak, Yahuwah, stationed in the pathway, his sword drawn in his hand. And the she-ass turned away from the pathway and walked into a field. And Balaam struck the she-ass to turn her back into the pathway. And Balak, Yahuwah, took a stand there in a vineyard's narrow way. And the she-ass, she observed Balak, Yahuwah. I actually really like the way Pamela phrases this here. Let me just read the King James real quick. It says in the King James, and when the ass saw the angel of the Lord, she thrust herself into the wall and crushed Balaam's foot against the wall. So it's very violent, right? This idea that the donkey violently pushes him against in this narrow pathway in a vineyard against the wall and crushes his foot. But then look how Pamela phrases it here. She squeezed herself toward the wall and she pressed Balaam's foot against the wall. And he struck her yet again and again. Balak, Yahuwah, passed through, and he stood in a narrow standing place where there was no path to turn aside to the right hand or to the left. And the she-ass observed Balak, Yahuwah, and she lay down beneath Balaam, and Balaam's anger burned, and he smote the she-ass with the rod. I don't know if any of you have ever had a frustrating example with a donkey or a mule before, and there wasn't even an angel standing there. Well, maybe there was, but yeah. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, opened the mouth of the she-ass, and she spoke unto Balaam, what have I done to you that you have struck me these 3 steps of the foot? And Balaam declared unto the she-ass, because I just love how like the donkey speaks to him and he just speaks right back. But maybe it isn't so alarming for him. To quote Michael Heiser again, he talks about the serpent in Eden. The idea of a talking serpent means there's magic, right? There's some sort of uh, something supernatural happening. And so Balaam, recognizes, I think, that there's something super spiritual happening, and I don't think it alarms him that much. But anyways, he says, because you have vexed me, acting petulant against me. If only there existed a sword in my hand, for at this time I would kill you. I think most people, if they have their animals start talking to them, they might say something different. You see what I mean? And the she-ass declared unto Balaam, am I not your own she-ass, which has carried you continually unto this day? Has this ever been my habit to fashion thus unto you? In this manner, he replied, no. So he agrees that the ass is correct and he is wrong. And he's in turn being the ass. And Yahuwah, the ever living, uncovered the eyes of Balaam, and he saw Balak, Yahuwah, standing in the way. Is that interesting phrasing there? In the way, with his sword drawn. So it's almost like almost like a play on words, that Balaam is going the wrong way and Yahuwah is in the way. And doing homage, Balaam fell upon his face. And Balak, Yahuwah, declared toward him, why have you struck your she-ass these 3 steps of the foot? Behold, I had gone forth to be an adversary, for your say is perverse in my presence. So you see that there, that he is an adversary to anyone who is perverse in his presence. So let's just get our facts straight here about what this, in this case, what a righteous person is to a non-righteous person in terms of Satan. And the she-ass observed me, and she turned aside from my face these 3 steps of the foot. Unless she had not turned aside from my face, certainly at this time also I would have killed you, and as a sign, her I would have kept alive. And Balaam declared unto Balak, Yahuwah, I have erred. I did not know that you stood against me in the way. And now, if it seem evil in your eyes, I will turn back by myself. And Balak, Yahuwah, declared toward Balaam, walk with the men, nevertheless, only ath ha dabar, the word which I set forth toward you, that shall you speak. So Balaam walked with the nobles of Balak. Isn't that fascinating how Yahuwah is saying he's going to speak through a wicked man? There's a lot we could pull from that. And Balak heard and responded because Balaam had come. And he went forth to meet him toward a city of Moab, which was over against the border of Arnon or Arnuan, which was by the extremity of the border. And Balak declared unto Balaam, did I not send out messengers unto you to call out to you? For what reason did you not walk toward me? Am I not capable of granting you honor? And Balaam said unto Balak, behold, I have come to you at this time. Do I indeed have the ability to say anything? Ha dabar, which Elohim has placed in my mouth, him shall I speak. And Balaam walked with Balak, and he came into the city of walls. And I think in the King James it says, and they came into, it's funny, like now in the King James, I actually can't pronounce this. Usually it's the opposite, but Kirja Thuzoth. So Pamela just translate that to city of walls, which is kind of ironic because I'll be quoting from a passage of Balaam, a prophecy of Balaam that was found on a collapsed wall. And Balak slaughtered as sacrifice oxen and sheep for Balaam and for the nobles which were with him. And he existed upon daybreak that Balak took Balaam and caused him to ascend into the high place of Baal, that he might observe from there the extremities of the people. The prophecies of Balaam. And Balaam declared toward Balak, build for me in this place 7 altars and stand upright to me in this place 7 oxen and 7 rams. That's one of the things I wanted to go over in my research tonight was, the 7 number. I didn't get to cover that, but that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I mean, very specific. They wanted 7 of something. And Balak fashioned like the plan which Balaam had proposed. And Balak and Balaam offered as an ascending offering a young bullock and a ram on each altar. And Balaam said to Balak, stand over against your sinning offering, and I will walk. Perhaps Yahuwah will come to meet me. So one of the things I also wanted to go over tonight, now I have a lot of material to get through, I promise. that I didn't get to tonight is I wanted to show you a map of east of the Jordan River and the whole kind of plain there. And so Israel was camped across from the Jordan. They're getting ready to cross over. And Moshe is going to die real soon. Of course, Deuteronomy is like his big Pharaoh speech. And they could, Jericho is just on the other side, a couple other cities. And I want to show you on a map all the places that Balaam kind of went with these different altars as he's going to these different peaks, and he's spying and he's looking down and seeing how immense Yasharel is. They're just covering this whole plain. I mean, there is no possible way they could have survived there if it wasn't for the manna and other things like that. There's just no way. I mean, unless if they were eating their own animals, but they couldn't go out, and they were like the sand of the sea. Seashore, I should say. Anyways, I didn't get around to showing you. Maybe next year I'll show you a map. It's kind of cool to look at all the places where Balaam was going, the different peaks and staring down. And Balak and Balaam offered as an ascending offering a young bullock and a ram on each altar. And Balaam said to Balak, "Stand over against your sinning offering, and I will walk. Perhaps Yahweh will come to meet me. Whatsoever word he reveals to me, that conspicuously, in the sight of all, I will proclaim unto you." So it's funny how this king it's like they're actually going to use the words of Yahweh. The plan is to use the words of Yah against, like, they're basically the Elohim, the Elohim of this people against them. And he walked to a naked hill, and Elohim met Balaam, and Balaam, said unto him, "I have arranged and ordered 7 altars, and I have offered as an ascending offering a young bullock and a ram upon each altar." He knew, I guess, well, not to have unclean animals on there. And Yahweh, the ever-living, placed a word in Balaam's mouth, and he declared, "Turn back toward Balak, and like this shall you set forth the word." And Balaam, turned back toward him, and behold, Balak stood by his ascending offerings, and he and all the nobles of Moab. And Balaam lifted up his parable. "From Aram, Balak, Malak of Moab, has led me forth from the mountains where the sun rises on the horizon. Walk. Curse for me Yaakov," that'd be Jacob, "and walk. Provoke to anger Yasharel. To what profit shall I curse, whom short for Elohim, has not cursed? Or for what reason shall I enrage whom Yahweh has not enraged? For from the head of the rock I observe him, and from the hills I will regard him. Behold, the people separated. He shall settle down to dwell, and among the Goyim, the Gentiles, the nations, he shall not be calculated. How can the dry earth of Yaakov be numbered? Or how can a 4th part of Yasharel be tallied? Let my Nephash die the death of the upright ones, and may my future time exist like his." And Balak declared, that's okay. Really amazing end of the prayer right there. Just want to say this one more time because I'm not going to be covering this later. He's actually praying. He's looking at the children of Yaakov, these righteous people. I mean, the unrighteous have all been killed off. So these are the people getting ready to cross over, guys. Like they have passed the test. These are the children that were under 20 that have grown up now. They could be upwards of like 59, 60 years old. But this righteous generation, we know they're righteous because it says so in Joshua, that the generation that crossed over the Jordan was a righteous generation. And he's saying that his soul, he wants to die the death of these people. And he says that he wants his future to exist like that of Yaakov. And Balak declared toward Balaam, "For what purpose have you fashioned this unto me?" He's like he's ticked off. He's offended. He's like, "I brought you here to curse these people, and you're saying that these are like righteous people and they're going to have this amazing end. I took you to curse my enemies, and behold, you have gifted them a barak, a blessing." And Balaam pronounced in a loud voice, singing, and said, "Without that which Yahweh has placed in my mouth." He told him, he said, "Look, I'm going to say whatever he tells me to say. Also, I must keep watch over the word. Behold, a barak, a blessing. When I have received a barak, yes, then I cannot return her. He has not observed misfortune in Yaakov, and has not seen weariness, trouble, vexation in Yasharel. Yahuwah, his Allahayah, is with him, and the joyful noise, a warlike cry, Balak is among him. Al has brought them forth from Mitzrayim like the swift course of a ram unto him. Let me just look up that word real quick. Oh, interesting, Pamela. A unicorn. So, like the swift course of a unicorn unto him. I'm glad I looked that up. I totally missed that in my study. Bummer. I would have had a bunch of notes on that. For there is no enchantment against Yaakov and no divination against Yasharel. In proper time, at a fitting opportunity, he shall declare of Yaakov and of Yasharel what Al has created. Behold, the people are like a roaring lion. He shall rise up, and like a young lion, he shall lift himself up, and he shall not lie down until he eat that which was torn into pieces, and he shall drink the blood of the slain. And Balak declared, if cursing, you will not curse them. Certainly do not barak them. Don't bless them. And Balaam pronounced in a loud voice, and he made declaration, Balak, did I not set forth words toward you to declare that all Yahuwah will speak, him I must fashion? And Balak said unto Balaam, walk, I beseech you. I will take you toward a standing place. Afterwards, if approvable in the eyes of Ha-Alahayam, then curse them for me from there. And Balak took Balaam to the head of the Peor, or the Fa-I-Er. I added that word in there just so I could pronounce it. That looks down over the face of the waste. And Balaam declared toward Balak, build for me upon this place 7 altars, and make ready for me 7 bullocks and 7 rams. And Balak fashioned like that which Balaam had said. And he offered as an ascending offering a young bullock and a ram on every altar. Chapter 24. Pausing for some coffee. And Balaam, observing that it was excellent, pleasant, beneficial in the eyes of Yahuwah, the ever-living, to Barak Yasharel, therefore, he did not walk step after step to meet for divinations, but he set his face toward the wilderness. And Balaam lifted up his eyes, and he observed Yasharel dwelling according to their tribes. And she existed over him, the Ruach of Allahayam. And so you can see there, Pamela is stressing the she part of the Ruach. And he lifted up his parable, and he declared an utterance of Balaam, son of Beor. And he shall prophesy, the strong one, whose eyes are open. I think this is where we get into the star and the scepter prophecy. How excellent are your tents, O Yaakov, and your Mashakan dwelling place, O Yasharel. Like torrents in the valley, he stretches out. Like a garden over against the river, like trees of aloe, which Yahuwah the ever-living has planted upright, like cedar trees. Over against the waters flow from his buckets, and his seed upon great waters, and exalted his Malak rises up, and his kingdom will be lifted up. Al, chief shepherd from Mitzrayim, like the swift strength of the ram unto him. So there's that same word again, the ra'am, that what appears to be a unicorn. He shall consume the goyim, his enemies, and their bones are cut off. And with his arrows he shall agitate them, bowing, lying down, like a lion's whelp, and like a roaring lion. Who would cause him to rise up? And he who will barak you, he is barak. And he who will curse you, he is cursed. And the anger of Balak burned against Balaam, and he clapped his hands. And Balak declared toward Balaam, I called you here to curse my enemies. And behold, you did barak a barak, these 3 strokes of the anvil. So the 3rd time in a row, they've gone to the 3rd peak, and every single time he blesses them. Now run away for yourself toward your place, for I have thought to greatly honor you, but behold, Yahuwah the ever-living had held you back from honor. Isn't that interesting? Now I highlighted this because this is the line that really struck me in this whole thing. This is from Balak's perspective. And think about this from the world's perspective, the perspective of the unrighteous. And I would include a lot of Christianity in this too. The state of Christianity today, the broad path that they're on. And they look at people who are following Yah's instructions. Now, I'm not calling Balaam a righteous man. He was a wicked wizard. But for those of us who are listening to his voice and following his instructions, doing what he says to do, I think that we fall under the category of how Balak views them. He's like, look, I was going to honor you. You were going to be greatly esteemed. And now you're listening to Yahweh and you are held back from honor. Do you see how that works? And so in history is not set up in such a way to honor those who are truly serving Yah. You're not going to be in the spotlight. You're not going to be out there on the stage. People are going to hate you. They're going to ignore you. They're going to think you're a person of dishonor. They're going to think that the people who are truly honored are, people who are living unrighteous lives. That's how I read this line. It really, really hit me as I'm reading from the perspective of a wicked king, a Moabite trying to take out Israel, wanting to destroy Yasharel and remove them from the earth. And Balaam declared toward Balak, did I not speak unto your messengers which you sent forth unto me? I set words in order to declare, conditionally, should Balak gift to me his house made full with silver and gold, I am not able to pass over the mouth of Yahweh, the ever-living, to fashion either the beautiful or the bad from my own heart. It sounds to me like Balak is like, look, I was going to give you all these riches, and I'm not doing that now. You're going to be dishonored. And he's like, look, I told you, like, for all the riches in the world, I cannot go against the word of Yahweh. I told you this in advance. That was part of the deal. But I mean, I don't know who's breaking what into the deal or what. That can be a whole different discussion. To fashion either the beautiful or the bad from my own heart, but what words Yahweh the ever-living will set in order, him I will speak. And at this time, behold, I will walk unto my people. Walk. And I will give counsel what he shall work for this people unto your people in the future days. And he lifted up this parable and he declared, an utterance of Balaam, son of Beor, and a prophecy of the warrior, whose eyes are open, an utterance of one who has heard and answered, the saying of the mighty leader, and he will know the intelligence of Al-Yon, a vision of Shaddai, or like Shaddai. He beheld the falling, but his eyes were uncovered. I observed him, but not at the present. I looked upon him, but not near his path. So here's the star and the rod prophecy, which we'll be talking about. A star from Jacob, and shall arise a measuring rod, or you can say a scepter, from Yasharel, and he shall smite the region of Moab, and shall undermine all the sons of Shath. And Adom shall exist, that would be Edom, and Edom shall exist as a possession, and Shah Ayar shall exist as a possession of his enemies, and Yasharel shall fashion forcefully, and he will descend from Jacob, and the survivors from the city shall wander lost, ready to perish. Guys, isn't this amazing? There's a messianic prophecy in the Old Testament coming from Balaam. And he shall observe Amalek, and he shall lift up his parable, and he shall declare, Amalek, the first of the Goyim, but his posterity shall be wretched, unfortunate. And this is where it gets really trippy, according to Pamela's translation. And he shall observe Atha Kuya Nuya. Now, let me just look at this for you so I get this right. This is talking about the descendants of Cain right here. And he shall observe the descendants of Cain, like the seed of Cain, right? And he shall lift up and he shall declare, firm, constant is the flow of your habitation, and you have established your nest upon a rock. But conditionally, should Cain exist to be burned with fire until when Asher shall take you captive. So he's saying right there that Cain, I was talking to Pamela about this. Her idea on this is that Cain, the actual entity, Cain, not just the people, the sons of Cain, but Cain himself still existed at that time for a specific purpose to eventually be burned. I'll be talking more about that. And he lifted up his parable and declared, woe, who shall exist when Al establishes him, and ships are from the hand of Cathulam, and Asher shall be afflicted, and Abar shall be brought low. Of course, that's talking about Assyria, and the Abar there is a word for the region beyond, and the region beyond shall be brought low. And in addition, he shall be destroyed perpetually. And Balaam rose up and he walked and he returned to his place. Balak also walked unto his own way. And Yasharel settled down to dwell in Shittim or Shatayam, and the people were seduced to commit fornication with the daughters of Moab. And they called out unto the people to sacrifice unto their Allahiah. And the people did eat and did bow themselves down until their Allahiah. And Yasharel was bound unto Baal. This would be, Baal Peor in the King James, but I'll try this. Baal Fa Yor. And the anger of Yahweh the ever-living burned against Yasharel. Now, for those of you rookies out there, maybe this is your first time, you don't know what's going on. Balaam wasn't able to curse Yasharel. He could only bless them. But what he could do is he could lead them into temptation to sin. So he blessed them and then brought all these hot-looking babes, scantily dressed babes, bringing their gods, Baal, into the camp. So all the dudes are like, they're out in the wilderness a long time, and these foreign women are coming in, and they're like, oh, hello. They're looking out their tents, and they're coming in, and it's not going to be pretty. So they are being tempted now. And the great thing, there's no great thing about temptation. But the thing about temptation is that if you're truly being tempted, guys, if the temptation is done right, you don't know you're being tempted. That's the whole thing about temptation. It can't be a true temptation. Well, I can't say it can't be a true temptation. It probably isn't a temptation, unless if you don't realize it's happening. And that's why we need to be so fixed in our morality and just naturally do the right thing, so we could, when the wrong thing comes up, we know immediately, I don't want anything to do with this. So there were people in this camp going, yeah, this is not going to end well. I remember what happened when my parents died to the fiery serpents and all these other things. And Yahweh the ever-living declared, Al-Mashaha, take all the heads of the people and fix them to a stake unto Yahweh, conspicuously before Ha-Shamash, that he may turn away the burning anger of Yahweh from Yasharel. And Mashaha declared toward the judges of Yasharel, each of you shall slay his men, the ones joined until Baal Peor. So this is immediate. Like, it's like they are still, I don't want to get too graphic here, but they are still on top of each other in intercourse, like across the camp. This is happening live time. A few minutes have passed. And Yahweh has like, we're dealing with this right now, immediately. Like these, again, I don't want to get too graphic, but you're going to see like, he's like, those people aren't even climaxing before they're dead. Like, it's going to happen now. We're going to kill them off now. And behold, a man from the sons of Yasharel came and brought near toward his brothers a Midianitish woman, or a Madayanuyath, before the eyes of Mashaha and before the eyes of all the gathered assemblies of the sons of Yasharel, as they were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. So the scene that is being set up here is there are righteous people that are weeping to see the wickedness that is happening. If I'm reading this right, and I think I am. And in the sight of all these people who are mourning for the sins that are being committed, and they're probably at the tent of meeting, like being intercessors, probably praying for this situation. He brazenly brings in this woman, and they strip down and right there start going at it. And Phinehas, or it would be in the Paleo, Phaya Nukas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, so the grandson of Aaron, he observed this going on. And he rose up from the midst of the assembly, and he took a spear in his hand. Some translations would say like a javelin. Oh, yeah, the King James says a javelin. And he went after the man of Yasharel toward the large vaulted tents, and he thrust through the two of them, the man of Yasharel and the woman, toward her hollowed out space. And so the plague was restrained from over the sons of Yasharel, and he existed, the dead ones in the plague, 24,000. I think that concludes the reading. So that was a pretty intense way to end that. Now I'm going to be, hold on, I need to pour a little bit of coffee. Hang with me here. Thank you, everybody who is with me tonight. I mean, I know that many people watch this video throughout the week, but it's really awesome to see the comments and see you guys live here in the chat, listening along. Now, I went over this last week, and I did. So this is a review, and I basically, the whole idea, I'm not going to cover this tonight because for lack of time, but the whole idea was that Og was summoned from Bashan, which the idea is it was the land of the dead. There seems to be connections there. I showed that in Psalms, that the idea that Yah would actually bring people up from Bashan, and also the depth of the sea. You see that in Psalm 68 there. And then when, of course, Kepha or Peter, he is, stands on the rock, and he is called the rock. And right there at the grotto, Pan is really interesting to think about that. Pan, it was Ham, the son of Noah, was Pan, and all sorts of disgusting things with Pan. So who was it said last week that Peter versus Pan or something like that? It's because Peter is there, Peter versus Pan. But and he says, the gates of Sheol, or the gates of Hades, will not overcome. And that's a big debated verse. Is it going to be an assault on Sheol, or vice versa, or what? But clearly we know Yahushua HaMashiach went down into Sheol, and he brought them up out of Bashan, really. All right, so I'm not going to go through all that again. But just wanted to show that because we see again Balaam being brought out. Now, there is something called the Balaam text. Have you guys ever heard of this before? It's called the Deir Allah inscription. It is found in Jordan. You can see right there on the map. I'm quoting here from Wikipedia, but the Deir Allah, it's the split between the Jabbok River and the Jordan River over there, and it's kind of close to the area where I think this might be just north of where they were. I wish it showed Jericho on here because they were just southeast of Jericho. And so I'm not quite sure on here, but the same area where he was. So let's see, this was discovered, this inscription. So you can see it here. This is actually on a wall. They didn't chisel into the wall. This is actually like inked onto the wall, and it survived over thousands of years. It was discovered in 1967 during an excavation in Deir Allah, Jordan. It is currently at the Jordan Archaeological Museum. The excavation revealed a multiple chamber structure that had been destroyed by an earthquake during the Persian period. And this is, of course, their reconstruction when they say it happened in history, but we'll just go with it. It was on ink on plastered wall. Okay, so let me read. This is the reconstruction of what it says. Now, there's a lot missing, but this is what we have. So the whole bottom part is pretty much missing, but we get an interesting picture above, and it appears that Balaam, he was a prophet. He was a wicked prophet, but he was a prophet who had some sort of connection with the divine council. And this is what it says. This is the book of Balaam, son of Beor, a seer of the gods. So I'm taking it that this is a reprint, that the wall wasn't original. It was them preserving something that was written on a scroll or a tablet or something that they then put up on the wall. To him came the gods at night, and they spoke to him according to the utterance of El. And they spoke to Balaam, son of Beor, thus. And Balaam arose in the morning, and he was not able to eat, and he fasted while he was weeping grievously. And his people came to him, and they said to Balaam, son of Beor, why do you fast? And why do you weep? And he said to them, sit down. I will show you what the Shadayin are something ing, or maybe what they're saying. Now come to see what the Elohim are, or the Elohim are about to do. The Elohim gathered while the Shadayin met in assembly. So he's talking about the divine council. So he has some sort of connection with when Yahweh gets together, or you say Allahayam gets together with the different Allahayam over the earth. And said to Shamash, thou mayest break the bolts of heaven, and thy clouds let there be gloominess, and no brilliance, darkness, and not thy radiance. Thou may cause terror by the gloomy clouds, but do not be angry forever, for the swift is reproaching the eagle, and the vultures brood the ostrich. The stork, something the young of the hawk, and the owl, the chick of the heron. The swallow is something the dove. Okay. Um, the hyenas are listening to instruction. The young of the something is laughing at wise men. So he's talking here about, and this line down here is where, so he's basically saying there's a lot of weeping, and it's kind of biblical language of the hyenas and the jackals and the vultures, right? These unclean animals, there's going to be a wilderness, a waste. And he says, and all are beholding the oppression by something of Ishtar. The understanding of this is that he's saying that he has realized, he has heard a word from a court order that Ishtar and the gods are being removed. It's really interesting. So this may correspond with the whole incident here with Balaam and Numbers, where he's realizing that Yahweh has in control now. He's coming in and the other gods are moving out. They're being judged. So it's a really interesting, from a different perspective, a testimony that backs up this whole biblical account. Now let's talk about talking animals, the talking donkey. This is what it says in the Aramaic Targum. In the passage in Numbers where it talks about Numbers 22. 10 things were created after the world had been founded at the coming of the Sabbath between suns. So 6 days of creation have gone by according to this, and the sun hasn't come up yet. It's not the Sabbath day. And it says the manna, the well, the rod of Moshe, the diamond, the rainbow, the cloud of glory, the mouth of the earth, the writing of the tables of the covenant, the demons, and the speaking ass. Now, there's a lot there, and some of you guys are going like, what? Like, where are they getting this from? That's a good question. I don't think this is an Aramaic Targum. I don't think they're just pulling this out of thin air. I think that there's a lot of sources that go with this, where they're pulling this from. Why are there demons being created on the nights between the sixth day and the Sabbath? I think I have an idea. I think Lilith has something to do with that. This is not talking about Nephilim, disembodied spirits of Nephilim there, but the speaking ass. This ass apparently was created on that day. It's not the only time in the Aramaic Targum where it talks about animals being created in heaven. And in that hour, the word of Yahweh opened her mouth and fitted her to speak. And she said to Balaam, what have I done to thee that thou hast smitten me these 3 times? Now, look at the response here, once again, from the donkey. It says, and the ass said to Balaam, woe to thee, Balaam, thou wanting in mind when me, an unclean beast, who am to die in this world and not to enter the world to come. Well, that's really interesting. Now, we've had this discussion a lot in this group. Most pets we own, like most people aren't going to have clean animals as pets. Like most people don't think of sheep or goats as pets. Maybe they do. I don't really generally speak to people that have a sheep as a pet. It's usually unclean animals, dogs, cats, parrots, things like that, right? Unclean animals. And according to this donkey in this passage, that he will have no share in the world to come. And, that's maybe not the best news for everyone out there. I'm not telling you whether all dogs go to heaven or not. This is because a lot of people, they think, oh, I just hope my dog's going to be in heaven. I don't really know. But let me just throw a few things out there to consider. Revelation 18:2, it says this. And he called out with a mighty voice, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She has become a dwelling place for demons. So here we see demons, just like in the last passage on the in between the suns created, a haunt for every unclean spirit. So, okay. It's interesting how they distinguish unclean spirits from demons. That's kind of interesting. A haunt for every unclean bird, a haunt for every unclean and detestable beast. So there is something to this about this here Babylon. It's Jerusalem has fallen. It's destroyed. And now all the cleanliness is gone from it, right? It's no longer a spiritual inheritance. It is now an inheritance of unclean creatures. Something to think about. And we read in Revelation 22:15, I know I'm probably like, guys, I really don't want to like upset anyone here. I really don't, because people are going to be upset. I know I'm going to get like a letter about this week. Someone's going to be upset about their dog. I'm just reading to you what scripture is. You guys can make up your own mind on this. In Revelation 22:15, it says, outside are the dogs and the sorcerers and the sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. Now, we could talk about dogs as maybe a spiritual component of people. Nevertheless, even if that is a type of person that is being described, a dog-like person, according to the letter of Barnabas, it's still classified, right? Dogs are still classified as unclean. All right. Now, here's another interesting example in scripture where an animal talks. This is in Jasher. I'll go ahead and read this story for you guys. The context here is that Yosef has been thrown into the pit by his brothers. They're originally going to murder him. He gets sold into slavery. He's off. They take his coat of, how do you want to translate many colors? I can't remember how Pamela translates it. And they bloodied up, I think it was the blood of a goat. And they hand it to Yaakov, say that he was killed by a beast. And here's the story in Jasher. And after this, Yaakov rose up from the ground and his tears were running down his cheeks. And he said unto his sons, rise up and take your swords and your bows and go forth into the field and seek whether you can find my son's body and bring it unto me that I may bury it. Seek also, I pray you, among the beasts and hunt them. And that which shall come the first before you seize and bring it unto me, perhaps Yahweh will this day pity my affliction and prepare before you that which did tear my son in pieces and bring it unto me, and I will avenge the cause of my son. And his sons did as their father had commanded them, and they rose up early in the morning, and each took his sword and his bow in his hand, and they went forth into the field to hunt the beast. And Yaakov was still crying aloud and weeping and walking to and fro in the house and smiting his hands together, saying, Yosef, my son, Yosef, my son. And the sons of Yaakov went into the wilderness to seize the beast, and behold, a wolf came toward them, and they seized him and brought him unto their father. So interesting that it's a wolf too. It's almost like a connection between their wolfish behavior, what they did to the sheep of his flock, right? Like they were in a place called what was the name of the place? Doesn't matter at this point. But they were basically tending a flock of sheep at a well that had no water in it. They were not good shepherds. They weren't tending to the health of the sheep. And then the spirit of jealousy came in. They cut out one of the sheep of Israel, right? Yaakov's sheep. And so it's like wolfish behavior here. So a wolf comes to actually kind of expose them in a way. And they brought this wolf into their father, and they said unto him, this is the first we have found, and we have brought him unto thee as thou did command us, and thy son's body we could not find. And Yaakov took the beast from the hands of his sons, and he cried out with a loud and weeping voice, holding the beast in his hand, and he spoke with a bitter heart unto the beast. Why did thou devour my son Yosef? And how did thou have no fear of the Elohim of the earth, or of my trouble for my son Yosef? And thou did devour my son for naught, because he committed no violence, and did thereby render me culpable on his account. Therefore Elohim will require him that is persecuted. And Yahweh opened the mouth of the beast in order to comfort Yaakov with its words. So remember now, the donkey, Yahweh also opened the mouth of the donkey. And it answered Yaakov and spoke these words unto him, as Elohim liveth, who created us in the earth, and as thy soul liveth, my Adonai, I did not see thy son, neither did I tear him to pieces. But from a distant land I also came to seek my son, who went from me this day, and I know not whether he be living or dead. Isn't this interesting? The wolf is a contrast, or really a comparison, contrast and a comparison to Yaakov. This wolf's son was taken from him, just as Yosef, but he actually, unlike the sons who do not go to a distant land to find their brother, which they should, this wolf is actually doing this. Amazing. And I came this day into the field to seek my son, and your sons found me and seized me and increased my grief, and have this day brought me before thee, and I have now spoken all my words to thee. And now, therefore, O son of man, or son of Adam, I am in thy hands, and do unto me this day as it may seem good in thy sight. But by the life of Allahayam, who created me, I did not see thy son, nor did I tear him to pieces. Neither has the flesh of man entered my mouth all the days of my life. You know, his sons, his 11 sons, really his 10 sons, because Benjamin didn't have a part in this, but they're just standing there just like, what in the world? And they're probably just like standing around looking at each other like, I can't believe that wolf didn't actually expose us. Because remember now, Yahweh is opening up the mouth of this wolf. He could have totally just been like, yeah, your sons actually did this to you, you know. And when Yaakov heard the words of the beast, he was greatly astonished and sent forth the beast from his hand, and she went her way. And Yaakov was still crying aloud and weeping for Yosef day after day, and he mourned for his sons many days. So now let's look at the first confusion of tongues, and this comes from Yovelim, Jubilees. And I have stated many times that I believe that Adam and his wife, Chahwaha or Eve, were clothed, that they weren't just walking around naked. I mean, that is not comfortable for anybody to walk around naked. Too much is hanging and sagging and flopping around. Specifically, when you read the context of they were naked and felt no shame, it's specifically in the context of when they came together and became one flesh. Speaking of making children, all right? So they came together and were one flesh, and they were naked and felt no shame, which is the contrast when they are naked and they do feel shame with the serpent. See how that works? Nevertheless, I do admit that in this here, on the surface, according to Jubilees, it does kind of give the perspective that maybe they were naked, generally, because there's something about them being clothed with the skin of a animal. We know that's the serpent skin, but that there's something about their being clothed here that the animals lose their voice. It does seem like there's a connection, maybe not. But this would be Allahayam, perhaps Yahweh, made of them coats of skin and clothed them and sent them forth from the Garden of Eden. And on that day on which Adam went forth from the garden, he offered as a sweet savor an offering, frankincense, galbanum, and stacte, and spices in the morning with the rising of the sun, from the day when he covered his shame. And on that day was closed the mouth of all beast, and of cattle, and of birds, and of whatever walks, and of whatever moves, so that they could no longer speak. For, and here's the catch, for they had all spoken with one another, with one lip, and with one tongue. Isn't that interesting? So all the animals on the earth, this is the first confusion of tongues before Babel. And he sent out of the Garden of Eden all flesh that was in the Garden of Eden, and all flesh was scattered according to its kinds and according to its types into the places which had been created for them. I take that back. Maybe I'm reading too much in that. Maybe there's not as much about the nakedness as I thought, but I can be wrong with myself. I'm giving myself that permission. Well, we see that also, interestingly enough, Solomon spoke with the beasts, the birds, reptiles, and fish. And this is what it says in 1 Kings. And Allahayam gave Solomon, or Shaloma, wisdom and understanding beyond measure and breadth of mind like the sand on the seashore. So that Shaloma's wisdom surpassed the wisdom of all the people of the East and all the wisdom of Mitzrayim, or Egypt. For he was wiser than all other men, wiser than Ethan, the Ezrahites, and Heman. Looks like He-Man, I guess, wiser than He-Man. Calcol and Darda, the sons of Mahol, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He also spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. He spoke of trees, from the cedar that is in Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the wall. He spoke also of beasts and of birds and of reptiles and of fish. Now, the common idea, the rabbinical idea, but also you see in extra biblical books, was that when it says that he spoke also of beasts, birds, reptiles, and fish, is that he actually spoke to and with beast and the bees, I guess, birds and the bees, beasts, birds, reptiles, and fish. Now, you also notice I put trees there. He spoke of trees because I suspected he spoke with trees. All right, so we're getting into spirit territory there. So this is what it says in Legends of the Jews, volume 4. When Solomon was of good cheer by reason of wine, he summoned the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, the creeping reptiles, the shades, the specters, and the ghost to perform their dances before the kings, his neighbors, whom he invited to witness his power and greatness. This is what I think it means that he spoke with the trees. And I do believe, and I do believe that anything that's living has the potential of a spirit. I believe that with we see that in Enoch with even the clouds, the lightning, the rain, just the water, the earth itself, right? There's this realm is a spiritual realm. So I think that he was speaking with the spirits of nature as well, or he had the ability to do so. Furthermore, we read this in Legends of the Jews 4. Another of his, this is a kind of a parable, almost like Aesop's fables. And I'll read this story. It's kind of a cute story. It tells the story, and you can, whether this is historical or fictional or whatever, I leave that to you. Right now, I'm reading from Legends of the Jews. You guys know what I say every time. Bring out your salt shakers. If you reject this, that's fine. Still a really interesting story nonetheless. So this is what it says. Another of his disciples, this is speaking of Solomon's disciples. He is basically teaching, pupils all the mysteries of the kingdom. Another of his disciples had a similar experience, and this is the context of speaking to animals. Annually, a man came from a great distance to pay a visit to the wise king, and when he departed, Solomon was in the habit of bestowing a gift upon him. Once the guest refused the gift and asked the king to teach him the language of the birds and the animals instead. The king was ready to grant his request, but he did not fail to warn him first of the great danger connected with such knowledge. If thou tellest others a word of what thou hearest from an animal, he said, thou wilt surely suffer death. Thy destruction is inevitable. Nothing daunted, the visitor perished in his wish, and the king instructed him the secret art of speaking with animals or listening to what animals. It isn't this. I mean, think about this, guys. Like, I really do believe that there was a confusion of tongues with animals. Anyone who's ever owned a dog, I had dogs my entire life. And a dog will, no, I'm not familiar with cats. Cats are a completely different animal. But a dog will listen to you. They understand what you're saying. They will respond. And it's so interesting that they speak to other dogs and other animals and they understand you, but they cannot speak your language back. So it's like they want to. And I could totally see dogs just being able to speak our tongue, but there is a confusion of tongues that has stopped it from happening. But I digress. He returned home. He overheard a conversation between his ox and his ass. And the ass said, brother, how farest thou with these people? And the ox said, as thou livest, brother, I pass day and night in hard and painful toil. The ass said, I can give thee relief, brother, if thou wilt follow my advice. Thou shalt live in comfort, and shalt rid thyself of all hard work. The ox said, O brother, may thy heart be inclined toward me, to take pity on me and help me. I promise not to depart from thy advice to the right or the left. And the ass said, God knows I am speaking to thee in the uprightness of my heart and the purity of my thoughts. My advice to thee is not to eat either straw or fodder this night. When our master notices it, he will suppose that thou art sick. He will put no burdensome work upon thee, and thou can take a good rest. This is the way I did today. The ass is a liar. I'll tell you that in advance. The ox followed the advice of his companion. He touched none of the food thrown to him. The master, suspecting a ruse on the part of the ass, arose during the night, went to the stable, and watched the ass eat his fill from the manger belonging to the ox. So the donkey tricked the ox into not eating his food so he could eat a double portion. He could not help laughing out loud, which greatly amazed his wife, who, of course, had noticed nothing out of the way. The master evaded her question. Something ludicrous had just occurred to him, he said by way of explanation. For the sly trick played upon the ox, he determined to punish the ass. He ordered the servant to let the ox rest for the day and make the ass do the work of both animals. At the evening, the ass trudged into the stable, tired and exhausted. The ox greeted him with the words, brother, hast thou heard aught of our heartless master purpose? Yes, replied the ass. I heard them speak of having thee slaughtered. What a horrible ass. I should say, what an ass. If thou should refuse to eat this night too, they want to make sure of thy flesh at least. Scarcely had the ox heard the words of the ass when he threw himself upon his food like a ravenous lion upon his prey. Not a speck did he leave behind, and the master was suddenly moved to uproarious laughter. This time his wife insisted upon knowing the cause. In vain she entreated and supplicated. She swore not to live with him any more if he did not tell her why he laughed. The man loved her so devotedly that he was ready to sacrifice his life to satisfy her whim. But before taking leave of this world, he desired to see his friends and relations once more, and he invited them all to his house. Meantime, his dog was made aware of the master's approaching end, and such sadness took possession of the faithful beast that he touched neither food nor drink. The cock, on the other hand, gaily appropriated the food intended for the dog, and he and his wives enjoyed a banquet. Outraged by such unfeeling behavior, the dog said to the cock, "How great is thy impudence, and how insignificant thy modesty! Thy master is but a step from the grave, and thou eats and makest merry." And the cock's reply was, is it my fault if our master is a fool and an idiot? I have 10 wives, and I rule them as I will. Not one dares oppose me in my commands. Our master has a single wife, and this one he cannot control and manage. What ought our master to do? Asked the dog. Let him take a heavy stick and belabor his wife's back thoroughly, advised the cock. And I warrant thee, she won't plague him any more to reveal his secrets. And it comes from Legends of the Jews, Volume 4. So the dog, of course, is the hero of this story, cares for his master. The only one that really cares for his master, like a true dog. Can you imagine if you could hear conversations with your cats, what they would be saying? I don't even want to know what they would be saying, plotting against us. All right, well, let's move on. Balaam in the apostolic writings. So 3 times he shows up. I like calling it the apostolic writings. I don't like calling it the New Testament, just because nobody in the New Testament calls it the New Testament. Just the publisher of the Bible did put that page in there. But 3 times Balaam comes up. So it's kind of interesting that we have the 40 years in the wilderness, and they're going into the promised land. Most people don't make it, right? It's obviously a metaphor for our own lives. And of course, Balaam is right there, right when they're ready to cross the River Jordan. I mean, right at the end, the final test. And many people don't make the test. They fall, they commit whoredom, they die. And it was the same thing in the 40 years between Yahushua HaMashiach and the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, with the glorious appearing in the sky. And Balaam showed up. Now, when I was in the anti-Paul camp, this was the big thing that pulled me in, going, oh no, Paul is Balaam. But when you actually study the character put forth here of Balaam, according to Peter and Jude, I don't think it fits Paul's personality. I think it's a bit of a stretch, because we'll see here, like how they're describing Balaam. I do know that Revelation, clearly the Balaam in there, we'll get to it, but he talks about how this Balaam, this doctrine of Balaam, or this prophet or whoever, is causing people to commit whoredoms, the way of Baal, right? The transgression of Baal, meaning that they can bend the law. They can say, we don't need to keep the law, type of thing. But anyways, this comes from, I think the first one is Second Peter. I'll read this passage. But false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you. And he's quoting the wilderness generation, who will secretly bring in destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing upon themselves swift destruction. So it seems like these destructive heresies can lead to denying the master. And many will follow their sensuality, and because of them, the way of the truth will be blasphemed. So, you blaspheme the truth by, what are these destructive heresies? I mean, I could do a whole study on this, and it's breaking the Torah. It's the doctrine of Balaam is giving people permission to, break the law. They have grace, right? Grace, God's grace, doctrine of Balaam. We're good to go. He's not going to mind because of the cross and the blood and all that. For if Elohim did not spare the angels when they sinned, but cast them into Sheol and committed them to, actually, I think it says Tartessos there, Tartarus, but cast them into Tartarus or Tartessos. and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. If he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, with 7 others, when he brought a flood upon the world of the ungodly. By the way, that's the one passage I can find where it says 8 people on the ark, because we'll get to it next in the next cycle. Even Jasher, it seems like it says that there were a lot more people on the ark than just that family. If by turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah to ashes, he condemned them to extinction, making them an example of what is going to happen to the ungodly. And if he rescued righteous Lot, greatly distressed by the sensual conduct of the wicked. And that's the contrast there between Balaam and Moses. That one is like weeping for the wicked, and the others are celebrating the wickedness. For as that righteous man lived among them day after day, he was tormenting his righteous soul over their lawless deeds that he saw and heard. Then Yahweh knows how to rescue the righteous from trials and to keep the unrighteous under punishment until the day of judgment, and especially those who indulge in the lust of defiling passion and despise authority. One of my, I say this week after week after this week, to the point that I probably, people get insulted by this, is one of my biggest concerns about the Truthers movement, of which I consider myself a part of, is seeing all the people out there who despise authority. And it's almost like we have truth. We have truth on our side, so we despise authority. We just despise them all authority. And you just see that over and over and over again. That really, it concerns me greatly, because that is not a biblical attitude at all, to despise authority. Even if we figure out the president isn't really the guy in control, right? Or the Pope or whatever, right? And we figure out, what's really going on behind the scenes, so we have like a head up above everybody else. And we know what's really going on, or we know more of what's going on than the gullible public. It doesn't give us the right to despise authority. All right, let's not confuse the two. Bold and willful, they do not tremble as they blaspheme the glorious ones, whereas angels, though greater in might and power, do not pronounce a blasphemous judgment against them before Yahuwah. It's kind of an interesting idea, too, of that even the angels do not pronounce a blasphemous judgment against them before Yahuwah. That's something for us to consider as well. But these, like irrational animals, creatures of instinct, born to be caught and destroyed, blaspheming about matters of which they are ignorant, will also be destroyed in their destruction. So, Peter is talking about people in his own day. He's like, I don't think he's just talking about the Gentiles here. I think that he is seeing a movement of people that they're just living a wicked life, and they're saying all the right words. Maybe they're creating all the right doctrines and theology, and it's the doctrine of Balaam. Let's finish this here. 15. Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray. They have followed the way of Balaam. Remember when I pointed out earlier how Balaam was on the wrong path, and then Yahuwah stood in the way, right? And we know that Yahuwah, or Yahushua HaMashiach, is the way, but this is the wrong way, right? The way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved gain from wrongdoing. And so this is really where a lot of, they kind of, I think in the New Testament, I just said New Testament, where they really put this, they really give the twist here of the lemon on the idea of getting gain from wrongdoing. Now, isn't it interesting that when the king pointed out, he's like, I was going to honor you with all these riches, and you're like dishonored now because, you spoke the words of Yahuwah. But was rebuked for his own transgression. A speechless donkey spoke with human voice and restrained the prophet's madness. Now we see the same thing in Jude. For they walked in the way of Cain and abandoned themselves for the sake of gain to Balaam's error, and perished in Korah's rebellion. You see it, all three are connected. What did Korah rebel against? Moses, the Torah. Same thing as Balaam and Cain, all related. So if you are a part of Balaam's error or the doctrine of Balaam, you are in Cain's camp, you are in Korah's rebellion. It's not a place you want to be. But again, here it says it connects Balaam's error with the sake of gain. That is a temptation for everybody in the ministry to, sell out, right? Be like, yeah, I'm looking at you. You look at all these people making it really big, and you're like, yeah, I could follow their principles, and let's maybe soften, talking about the Torah and the commands, and because people don't want to hear about that. So maybe if I shut up and we just push that over here, and then maybe we'll stop, pronouncing the names, things like that, and we'll get more. That's a huge temptation for people in ministry in Camp Torah. I mean, you guys have all seen it. It's a huge temptation. Yeah. So this is Pergamum here. As you can see, it was destroyed. Pergamum, one of the 7 churches. And interestingly, this just blows my mind every time I read it in Revelation, where it says that, now, of course, this is Yahusha. This really should be called the Epistle of Yahusha. He actually wrote a letter, which is really exciting to think about. He's the author of a letter, even if Yochanan dictated it. But he says to the church of Pergamum, the ecclesia there, but I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam. Now, the teaching of Balaam here it seems like it's defined a little bit differently. It's not about gain, like you see in Jude and Peter. It's who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Yasharel so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality. So apparently that's still a thing. Eat food sacrificed to idols. Don't do that. And, practice sexual immorality. That's a big deal. So don't do that either. So also you have some who hold the teaching of the Nicolaitans, and it goes on from there. But so this is kind of fun, but totally serious. The Pergamon altar. And this is in Berlin, put in the museum there. This is from Wikipedia. It was brought in the 1800s. So, 1878 to 1886. This guy named Karl Humann excavated it in Pergamon, and he brought it to Berlin piece by piece. And so it's interesting that this is Satan's throne. That's what blows my mind every time. That Yahushua HaMashiach said that we're assuming this is maybe the Satan. I don't know, or if it's just a Satan. The adversary, right, is Balaam to the righteous. So maybe it's just a adversary, a Balaam type of person was seated there. But then, of course, we see that Barack Obama this is old news for some of you, but Barack Obama actually reconstructed that actual stage to speak in a 2008 campaign speech. It was like in August of 2008. I don't remember the exact date. I remember when it happened. And yeah, so that's interesting. Here's a passage in Deuteronomy 27:18. It said, "Cursed be anyone who misleads a blind man on the road, and all the people shall say amen." Now, this is one of the things I talk about a lot with the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, is that you can look at this exoterically if you're just checking off your box and go, okay, so I'll make sure that if I ever meet a blind man on the road, that I won't mislead him. If I take his hand, I'll lead him in the right direction. Well, that's true. That's true. Right? I would say that's the pure letter here. Check off that box. Great. If you have never led a blind man in the wrong direction, give yourself a round of applause. But then look at how it's this same passage is described in the Damascus document. Now, I hope you can see I'm tying this in with Balaam, right? The doctrine of Balaam of leading spiritually a blind person, right? They can see through their eyes, but they're spiritually blind. You're misleading them down the road. Why would you do that? Probably for personal gain. It could be for success, worldly success, being recognized, whatever. Convenience. I don't really know, but I'm tying this in with the doctrine of Balaam. And this is what it says in the Dead Sea Scroll here in the Damascus document. And if a man gives his daughter to another man, let him disclose all her blemishes to him, lest he bring upon himself the judgment of the curse, which is said of the one that makes the blind to wander out of the way. So you see how they tied that in right there, that they're actually tying this in with, in this case, something, a woman, like you're lying about a woman's history and giving him to another guy. And you're actually He's blind here because he doesn't know the truth of the situation. He doesn't have the facts. He's being led in the wrong way. So that's one of the ways you could be led in the doctrine of, you could be a leader of the doctrine of Balaam. We don't want to do that. We want to lead people in the right way. All right. The Balaam star and scepter prophecy. I almost wanted to, if I had more time, and I don't have time tonight anyways, maybe next year, I'll dig into kind of a parallel history where it's almost like a paradox. I don't know what it is, but when I look back through history, I see two parallel storylines of these wise men. I see a big tradition in extra biblical books of these wise men actually being righteous kings. And this is like the John Prester version of history. If you saw my Legend of John Prester, where he's the land of the wise men in the far east, and they were actually the sons of Seth, and they had the treasures of Adam and this kind of stuff, and they were longing for the king. But then the one I'm going with tonight is actually that these wise men, they had some connection with Balaam. They were kind of his disciples or something. Well, you see that in Numbers 24. I'm going to read from the King James because I already read from Pamela's version there. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not nigh. There shall come a star out of Yaakov, and a scepter shall rise out of Yasharel, and shall smite the corners of Moab and destroy all the children of Seth. And Edom shall be his possession. Seir also shall be a possession for his enemies, and Israel shall do valiantly. Out of Yaakov shall come he that shall have dominion, and shall destroy him that remaineth of the city. So this is obviously a prophecy of Mashiach, spoken from a wizard. Well, then we read this. Wise men from the east. Familiar story. You guys all know this. Matthew chapter 2. Now after Yahusha was born in Bethlehem of Yehuda, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, and here it is. They're quoting the prophecy of Balaam. Where is he who has been born king of the Yahudim? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him. They're saying, the one with the scepter, the rod, there's his star, so we're looking for him. Well, jumping over here to the book of the Illuminators, or the book of the Nazarene, Gospel of Duality, whatever you prefer for a title, we have it published under Book of the Illuminators. It says, now the stable was against the hill, which if you've ever been to Bethlehem, it is a bunch of caves built into the hill, in which made for like natural basements or garages under houses. They would build the houses on top of these caves, and it was perfect to put the sheep in there and so on and so forth. Now the stable was against a hill behind an inn where sages from the east were staying. So it's kind of funny, right? There was no room in the inn. Apparently the kings were already booked there. They were already there in advance, ironically, of when Joseph and Miriam arrived. And it's so messed up. I always think this is like a messed up scene. Like the woman is going into labor, and nobody there's like, get the woman a chair or something, like they're just, they moved out with the sheep. It's awful. But anyways, men of Sestera. Now I tried to look up where Sestera was. I found nothing. Apparently when this book was written in Britain by Joseph of Arimathea or whoever, by probably Kepha's father-in-law, Aristosthenes, Sestera was a place. Can't find anything on it now. So if you can, let me know. They were from Sestera, wise in the books of heaven and of Nimrod. So there's your connection right there. So these were magi of Nimrod. And a lot of people have stated that the magi came from Babylon, that they were students of Daniel, which could be the case, but it seems like they were kind of allied here with Nimrod. They were, his people. The books of heaven, I wanted to talk more about that because in other magi literature, I had it here. I wish I held it up for you guys. They talks about how these magi actually had the books that were written by Seth and Adam. So the wisdom literature that is now lost to us. Okay, what else do we have here? Oh, this is really fascinating. Hope you guys are enjoying this tonight. The Cain prophecy. I read this earlier, but conditionally, should Cain exist to be burned with fire? So here's a question I asked Pamela. Cain or the sons of Cain? What are we dealing with here? And Pamela responded, hope she doesn't mind me putting this. She responded, she said, it is actually Cain himself. From the way it is worded in the Hebrew, he exists or will exist for destruction, being consumed with fire, to be taken away, removed, exterminated. So the idea is that Cain lived up until that time for a specific purpose of judgment. And the judgment would be at the hands of Mashiach, because it's under that prophecy. And referring back to Og, it says right here that this is coming out of Genesis chapter, was it 14? Yeah, Genesis 14. And Og came, who had been spared from the giants that died in the deluge, and had ridden, protected upon the top of the ark, and sustained with food by Noah. That's a whole different topic, discussion. But it said, not being spared through high righteousness, but that the inhabitants of the world might see the power of Yahuwah and say, were there no giants who in the first time rebelled against Yahuwah of the world and perished from the earth? So the idea here is that it's saying that Og lived as long as he did, that he was still in existence at the time of Moshe, even though he goes back to Abraham. And I believe that Og goes pre-Diluvian as well. But that he lived as long as he could, just so he could see what Yah was going to do with Abraham's children, see what he was going to do with Noah's children, Abraham, all the way up to Moshe. The same thing with Cain. He was there for a specific purpose, so that he could live to see Mashiach. Now, here's going to be a preview of this Tuesday night when I talk about the Anunnaki. When I go, it's going to be a long, like 2.5 hour presentation, very detailed, lot of notes, and I'm going to be showing you Sumerian literature, and we're going to be doing some contrasts and comparisons with the Bible and extra biblical literature from the Anunnaki perspective. And here is from the Book of Enki, a Sumerian tablet. This is tablet 8, and this is what it says. Now, the context here is Cain and Abel. They spat on each other. So Cain and Abel are spitting on each other. With their fists, they fought. Greatly enraged, that should say Cain. It says Lane, but that's my misprint. Cain, a stone picked up. With it, he, Abel, in the head, struck. Again and again, he hit him over the head until Abel fell, his blood from him gushing. When Cain, his brother's blood, saw, Abel, Abel, my brother, he shouted. Motionless on the ground did Abel remain. From him his soul had departed. By the brother whom he had killed, Cain remained. For a long time he sat crying. Now, this is what I want you to see right here. This is a preview for this Tuesday night. TT, it was who, this is, TT is Eve. TT it was who of the killing was the first to know by a premonition. In a dream vision as she was sleeping, Abel's blood she saw. In the hand of Cain it was. Adapa, and that's Adam. Adapa from his sleep she awakened. Her dream vision to him she told. A heavy sorrow fills my heart. Did something terrifying happen? So did TT to Adapa say, greatly agitated she was. In the morning, the two from Erudu departed. To the whereabouts of Cain and Abel they went. In the field they found Cain. By the dead Abel he was still seated. Now I want you to compare the scene. I want you to pay attention to the fact that the Eve character has a premonition in the night of what happens, and she wakes her husband up in bed and says, something terrible has happened to Abel. I think Cain killed him. I saw it in my sleep. They run out and they see that it happened. Now, let's compare this with the revelation of Moshe. Keep in mind, I just read you a Sumerian tablet. All right. Now, this is the revelation of Moshe. And after this, Adam and Eve, or Chahwaha, were with one another. And when they lay down, Chahwaha said to Adam, her Adonai, my Adonai, I have seen in a dream this night by the blood of my son. She calls him their Amilabes, who is called Havel, thrown into the mouth of Cain, his brother, and he drank it without pity. And she says, let us arise and go and see what has happened. And having gone, they saw that Cain was killed by, or Havel was killed by the hand of his Cain, his brother. So you have these two different texts, one Hebrew, one Sumerian, and they both amazingly agree with each other. And this isn't a biblical text. This is an extra biblical. So I always look for this stuff, and I find it amazing when I see these connections from different cultures telling the same story. And it's not in canon. All right. So, and I'll be showing others as well. So let's talk about Cain surviving the flood. In the writings of Abraham, chapter 14, it says that I shall preserve, this is Yahuwah speaking, I shall preserve through her the seed of Cain through the flood. Noah went into his father Methuselah. I guess that's Noah speaking. So the idea is that he married two wives. With one wife, he had Shem and Japheth, and with Naamah, the daughter of Cain, or the was it the seventh granddaughter or whatever? I'd have to look. They carry the line of Cain and have Ham. So the seed survived, but it also says in chapter 18, a few chapters later, it said, moreover, Nimrod was instructed in all the secrets of the evil combination by his father Cain, for Cain had not perished in the flood. And what does that mean? A lot of people want to throw this book out because they see that, they don't like it. I personally believe that because he is a son of Hasatan, he is a Nephilim character, he is a disembodied spirit, and he survived in that sense. He wandered the earth. It wasn't just as a mortal he wandered the earth. No, he wandered the earth eternally, or until his eventual destruction, just like the other haunts. And then we see in Enoch, interestingly enough, Enoch chapter 22, when Enoch goes down to Sheol, and I'm reading here in the highlighted section, I saw the ruach of a dead man making suit, and his voice went forth to heaven and made suit. And I asked Raphael, the angel who was with me, and I said unto him, this ruach which maketh suit, he's whining and complaining, who is it, whose voice goeth forth and maketh suit to heaven? And he answered me, saying, this is the ruach which went forth from Abel, whom his brother Cain slew. And he makes suit against him till his seed is destroyed from the face of the earth, and his seed is annihilated from amongst the seed of men. Now, the big question is, if Cain, if his spirit is still on this earth, crazy to think about. It's crazy to think about Nimrod, Og, Lilith, Semiramis, who I believe became Lilith. All these individuals, they're still on this earth, or were they judged and destroyed before the millennial kingdom? I can't answer that. But it's interesting to think about the different world leaders. Well, who's Cain? Who's Og? Who's Nimrod, right? All that kind of stuff. But then we read this. Hopefully you guys are following my train of thought here. Odes of Solomon 22. And my theory on Odes of Solomon was that this may be a millennial kingdom piece, millennial kingdom literature. And the narrator of this time, again, he talks about how he was down in Sheol, and he was there as part of the resurrection. Like, the narrator of this claims to have been in Sheol and resurrected. And another time, the narrator is clearly Yahushua HaMashiach. So there's a kind of a change between the narrators. And this is what it says here in Ode 22. He who caused me to descend from on high and to ascend from the regions below, and he who gathers what is in the middle and throws them to me, he who scattered my enemies and my adversaries, he who gave me authority over bonds so that I might unbind them, he who overthrew by my hands the dragon with 7 heads. This is a reference to the dragon of Revelation, the beast of Revelation. Also, I believe this is a reference to Leviathan. And set me at his roots that I might destroy his seed. What? You were there and helped me, and in every place your name surrounded me. Your right hand destroyed his evil venom, and your hand leveled the way for those who believe in you. And it chose them from the graves and separated them from the dead ones. It took dead bones and covered them with flesh. It's talking about the resurrection. But they were motionless, so it gave them energy for life. Incorruptible was your way and your face. You have brought your world to corruption, that everything might be resolved and renewed. And the foundation of everything is your rock, and upon it you have built your kingdom, and it became the dwelling place of the holy ones. Hallelujah. I love this book, Odes of Solomon. I just need to do like a reading of it one night. But I've looked at this passage so many times, and is it saying that the seed of the serpent was destroyed, or it will be destroyed at this point in history when it's writing this? I can't make heads or tails of this. It could go either way. So was Cain destroyed, or does he continue on? I can't answer that question right now. Maybe you guys can help me out with that. Okay, let's talk about Phinehas. This is Numbers 25. Phinehas, as you recall, is the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, the grandson of Aaron. I'm going to read from the Aramaic Targum. And behold, a man of the sons of Yasharel came holding a Midianitess. So this is the occasion when, remember, Balaam could not curse Yasharel. He blessed them, but he was able to set up a trap to lead them into sexual immorality. And Phinehas is the one who he is so appalled at this Yasharel man who takes a Midianite woman. And while they're weeping at the tabernacle, or the tabernacle in the wilderness, they're having intercourse right there. So holding Midianitis, and brought her to his brethren in the sight of Moshe and all the congregation of the children of Yasharel. He answered and said to Moshe, what is it that is wrong to have company with her? If thou sayest it is forbidden, did thou not thyself take a Midianitis, the daughter of Jethro? When Moshe heard, he trembled and swooned, but they wept and cried, listen, and they stood at the door of the tabernacle of ordinance. And Phinehas bar Eleazar bar Aaron, the son of Aaron, the priest, saw, and remembering the ordination, answered and said, he who ought to kill, let him kill. Where are the lines of the tribe of Yehudah? When they saw, they were quiet, and he arose from among his Sanhedrin and took a lance in his hand. So this is kind of an interesting variation right here. And this is why I'm reading this for you. 12 miracles were wrought for Phinehas at the time that he went in after the man of Yasharel with the Midianite woman. The first was, he would have parted them, but could not. Their mouth was closed that they could not cry out. For had they cried out, they would have been rescued. That's kind of interesting. So maybe he was outnumbered, Phinehas, like he was going in and he knew that by committing this, doing what he was supposed to, the Levites were there to defend the tabernacle. They were at the center of the camp. And keep in mind, for this Yasharel man bringing this woman, he came through the entire camp. And none of the other tribes stopped him. None of them. And he was apparently outnumbered. He knew, like, by killing this man, it could be his death sentence as well. He drave the lance through both of them. The lance remained fixed in the wound. When he bare them aloft, the lintel was uplifted for him until he had gone forth. He carried them through the whole camp 6 miles without fatigue. So he's, he's got this just abounding energy. He's able to lift up these bodies on a lance. He's carried, so everyone in the camp sees what he did. He held them up by his right arm in sight of their kindred, who had no power to hurt him. So keep in mind, there's a lot of other people who committed this act, and they're pretty pissed. Of course, we know that they were all strung up too, the ones who committed this act. The lance was made strong so as not to be broken with the load. The iron transpierced them, but was not withdrawn. An angel came and made bare their corpses inside of the people. They lingered alive till they had been carried. That's so gross. They're still alive on the lance, but they can't speak. They lingered alive till they had been carried through the entire camp, lest the priests in the tabernacle should be defiled by the dead. Their blood thickened so as not to flow upon him, but when he had borne them through the camp, it brake forth, and they died. Answering, he said before Yahweh of the world, can it be that on account of these 24,000 of Yasharel shall die? Immediately the compassions of heaven were removed, and the plague was stayed from the children of Yasharel. And I've quoted from this before, but this is really interesting. In verse 12 of chapter 25, it says, swearing by my name, I say to him, and this is speaking to Phinehas, the grandson of Aaron, behold, I decree to him my covenant of shalom, and will make him an angel of the covenant, that he may ever live to announce the redemption at the end of the days. I have a lot of thoughts, or a few thoughts, on what that might be. I'm going to kind of hold my peace on it. But what do you guys think? What do you guys think it's talking about? That he would be an angel that would go on living to announce a redemption at the end of the days. I was just about to say what my thoughts are. I'm going to withhold my peace on that. All right, so let's get to what I really wanted to cover tonight. Balaam, Moshe's duality. And here we are coming up towards the end, and you know how it goes. I have to rush through this. But let's talk about Balaam's history. This goes back to Genesis, and this is in the Aramaic Targum, and it says, Yahweh is speaking with Abram, Genesis 12, and it says, I will bless the priests who will spread forth their hands in prayer, and bless thy sons, and Balaam, who will curse them, I will curse, and they shall slay him with the mouth of the sword. Say what? So the way this is written, it makes it sound like Balaam was alive in Abraham's time. I mean, he's not speaking about a future person. Abraham knew who Balaam was. Let's keep reading. This comes from Exodus chapter 9 in the Aramaic Targum. And the plague of hail is coming. And it says, so this is going to be a kind of duality, a contrast between Balaam and Job. And Job, who reverenced the word of Yahweh among the servants of Pharaoh, gathered together his servants and his flocks within the house. So we know that he was in Egypt. We know that he was there according to Jasher. He was a very wise man, and he of course, he married Dinah. That's a whole different study, but he married Dinah, the sister of the 12, and he got a double portion. She did as well. It's kind of a lovely story. But Balaam, who did not set his heart upon the word of Yahweh, left his servants and his flocks in the field, and of course they died. Moving on. So we know that Balaam was there during the Exodus account in Egypt. Numbers 22 says this, and he sent unto Laban the Aramite. Wait, who's Laban? Laban is, well, we'll get to it. Who was Balaam, so called because he it was. So Laban was Rivka's brother. Remember when Eliezer went back to get a wife for Yitzhak, and Rivka's brother was Laban. So according to this, and Laban is the same one who Yaakov went to get Rachel. Of course, he ended up with Leah, and you guys know that whole story, Leah and Rachel. That's what it's saying. It's saying that Balaam, according to the Aramaic Targum, Balaam was Laban. And this is why I read to you from the Og passage first. Yeah, it's saying, I don't know. You guys can take this for what it is. Either he is or he isn't. But the claim, according to the Aramaic Targum, is that Laban is Balaam. And I think part of him being a wizard is living a very long life, similar to Og. He was a very powerful individual. So, so here's in Jasher, and this is talking about how they were going to, Moshe is 3 years old. He's a baby. He stretches forth his hand and took the crown from Pharaoh's head, and everyone is looking around like, oh boy, you're not supposed to do that. They know he's a Hebrew, and they're like, we should put him down to death. Well, this is what it says here. And Balaam, the son of Beor, the magician, answered before the king princes, and he said, remember now, O my Adonai king, the dream which thou did dream many days since, and that which thy servant interpreted unto thee. So he says, this is a child from the Hebrew children, and in whom is the Ruach of Elohim, and let not my Adonai the king imagine that this younger did this thing without knowledge. He goes and he recounts the whole story of Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov. So he, even according to Jasher, Balaam is intimately aware of Abraham. And he is there. We see that he is there specifically as a terror to try to stop Moshe from being a success. So obviously you can see I'm not going to read all this. Reading from the end of chapter 7 in Yasher, and they told him all the counsels which Balaam, the son of Beor, had counseled against them, and what he had also counseled against him in order to slay him when he had taken the king's crown from off his head. And when Moshe heard these things, his anger was kindled against Balaam. So this is like later, Moshe hears this later on in life, and he sought to kill Balaam, and he was in ambush for him day by day. And Balaam was afraid of Moshe, and he and his 2 sons rose up and went forth from Egypt. And they fled and delivered their souls and betook themselves to the land of Cush, to the king of Cush. Now, those are his 2 sons again. Remember, his 2 sons went with them on the donkey episode. And of course, we know that his sons are Jannes and Jambres. Paul does talk about him. I'm not going to quote from Paul, but he does bring up Jannes and Jambres. The only other source we have to his 2 sons outside of the Aramaic Targum is Jasher. So these Balaam is there with Jannes and Jambres in the story. So according to Jasher, when the magicians of Pharaoh are throwing down their rods to make them into serpents, to, and of course Aaron's rod eats those rods, those serpents. It's actually Jannes and Jambres and Balaam. There they are trying to stop Moshe again. In Legends of the Jews, Volume 3, it says this about Balaam's ass. The ass that Balaam took with him and had been created on the 6th day of the creation, we saw that in the Aramaic Targum, he had received it as a gift from Yaakov, that he might not give evil counsel to Pharaoh concerning Yaakov's children. So, again, I don't know where that's being sourced from, but it's not the first time that we saw a animal from created in heaven in the property of Abraham and his children. We saw that with Abraham and Yitzhak, with the ram that came down from heaven. And I'll be talking more about that in my Anunnaki piece when they talk about the origins of sheep. Went over this last week with the basilisk, the winged serpents. And what's interesting about this is that Balaam is now in with the king of Cush, and Moshe is coming in, and he takes these storks and they go in and eats the serpents that Balaam puts there in front of the city to keep them out. These same serpents appear to be the ones in the wilderness later, the basilisk, that are coming in to destroy Yasharel. So it's interesting. You have the fiery serpents, Og, Balaam, right? And these are all there to oppose Yasharel and Moshe. All right, skipping through this just to conclude this for the night. So here we are, Balaam and duality. This is what it says in Legends of the Jews. The man whom the Moabites and Midianites believed to be Moses' peer was none other than Laban, Israel's arch enemy, who in olden days had wanted to root out entirely Yaakov and all his family, and who had later on incited Pharaoh and Amalek against the people of Israel to bring about their destruction. Skipping down here. Elohim would permit the heathens to have no ground for exultation, for saying the future world, thou hast kept us far from thee. To them, as well as to Yasharel, he gave kings, sages, and prophets. So, the old story about how, what happened to the people of old before Messiah showed up, well, according to this, Elohim has always brought forth prophets, always, from the beginning of time, to deliver the Torah so that there was no excuse. And of course, see, people, they say Jesus. No, Yahushua HaMashiach came to give us the Torah, guys. He came to clarify it for us. He brought it so that we are without excuse, living a righteous lifestyle. And that's what the job of the prophets have always been. To them, as well as to Yasharel, he gave kings, sages, and prophets. But whereas the former showed themselves worthy of their high trust, the later proved themselves unworthy of it. Both Solomon and Nebuchadnezzar. So it's going to show the polar opposites, duality. Solomon and Nebuchadnezzar are two polar opposites. Were rulers over all the world. The former built the temple and composed many hymns and prayers. The later destroyed the temple and cursed and blasphemed Yahweh, saying, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Who else said that, guys? Both David and Haman received great treasures from Elohim, but the former employed them to secure a site for his sanctuary, whereas the later with his tried to destroy the whole nation. And Moshe was Israel's prophet, and Balaam was prophet of the heathens. But how great a contrast between these two. Moshe exhorted his people to keep from sin, whereas Balaam counseled the nation to give up their moral course of life and to become addicted to lewdness. Balaam was also different from the Israelite prophet in his cruelty. They had such pity for the nations that misfortune among the heathens caused them suffering and sorrow, whereas Balaam was so cruel that he wanted to destroy an entire nation without any cause. So this is the difference again between wicked and righteousness. If you, a sign of the righteous is to look at the sorrows of the nations, right? And you want to, cry for them. You want them to repent. You so badly desire them to repent, and it brings you sorrow to see them go down a wicked path. You don't want the wickedness for them. You're not gloating and happy because they're going into wickedness. Whereas Balaam obviously wants them to take that slide. Reading this over here. Oh no, this is kind of interesting. Balaam's course of life and his actions show convincingly how God withdrew from the heathens the gift of prophecy. For Balaam was the last of the heathen prophets. It's kind of an interesting thought, isn't it? Shem had been the first whom God had commissioned to communicate his word to the heathens. This was after the flood. So it's not saying that Shem is a heathen, but he was actually very righteous, right? But there wasn't the nation of Yasharel yet. So he is going out to the heathens. And it should say this, I guess, the first after the flood, because before the flood, we know there was Enoch, Methuselah, Noah, and so on and so forth. This was after the flood when God said to Shem, had my Torah existed among the previous 10 generations, I suppose I should not have destroyed the world by the flood. Go now, announce to the nations of the earth my revelations, ask them if they will not accept my Torah. Throughout 400 years did Shem go about as a prophet, but the nations of the earth did not heed him. That's kind of encouraging to me, actually. I mean, it for those of you out there who you are also trying to get people to want to embrace Yah's instructions in righteous living, and they're rejecting it, to see that like Shem for 400 years was rejected. Yeah, it's sad, but it's kind of encouraging to see that we're in the same boat. The prophets that labored after him among the heathens were Job and his 4 friends, Eliphaz, Zophar, Bildad, and Elihu, as well as Balaam, all of whom were descendants of Nahor, Abraham's brother, from his union with Milcah, in order that the heathens might not say, had we had a prophet like Moses, we would have received the Torah. God gave them Balaam as a prophet, who in no way was inferior to Moses, either in wisdom or in the gift of prophecy. That's really interesting. So they're complete equals, light and dark. Moses was indeed the greatest prophet among the Israelites, but Balaam was his peer among the heathens. Legends of the Jew, volume 3. We're almost done tonight, guys. Let's read about the death of Balaam. This comes from the Aramaic Targum, Deuteronomy 31. And they slew the kings of the Midianites with the slain of their armies, Avi, Rechem, Zur, who was Balak, and Hur and Reba, 5 kings of Midian, and Balaam, Bar, Beor, they killed with the sword. And it was when Balaam the guilty saw Phinehas the priest pursuing him. So I always imagine this is like in Terminator, like the T-1000, like he's running after Balaam. Balaam's trying to get away. And he, like Phinehas has it out for Balaam, right? He's like, you did this to my camp. I'm coming after you. He made use of the magical arts, made words of enchantment, and flew in the air of the heavens. But Phinehas forthwith pronounced the great and holy name and flew after him and seized him by the head and bring him down, drew the sword and sought to kill him. And he says, but he opened his mouth with words of deprecation and said to Phinehas, if thou wilt spare my life, I swear to thee that all the days I live, I will not curse thy people. He answered him and said, art thou not Laban, the Amorite, who did seek to destroy Yaakov our father, who went down into Mitzrayim to destroy his children? And after they had come out of Mitzrayim, did sin the wicked Amalek against them? And hast thou not now been sent to curse them? And of course, then he kills them. Now, I had to look at this time again, because when you get down to Yahushua, it says that Balaam was killed by the sword at that time. It's like, wait, what? So he's not killed until Joshua, and now we're reading about it in Deuteronomy. And yeah, so I actually pulled up the Aramaic Targum of Joshua. I happen to have it on my shelf, and it said the same exact thing as Joshua right here, same thing. So I'm like, well, wait a second, what's going on? So I had to look at this time and again, and my conclusion is I think that they're basically saying in Deuteronomy 31, they're drawing ahead. They're telling you this is the fate of Balaam in Joshua. That this is how he dies, and he dies by, it's actually Eliezer who does him in. And it's a scene where, of course, you know, he like, the Aramaic Targum is really big on this idea that you can pronounce the name. It's almost like the secret combination that Nimrod had. You can pronounce the name and you could, you know, he could fly after him. It's kind of a humorous scene. But that's the death of Balaam right there. I give you another a passage here where actually Lilith is able to pronounce the name and she flies away. So there's this ongoing theme that there is a name that you can pronounce and you can do these, you know, miraculous things with. That's a whole nother study right there. And that's it for tonight. Bye, everybody. Hope you guys have a great Sabbath. I ended on time tonight pretty much. I'm happy with that. Yeah, have a great, restful day. Thank you, everybody, for making this a tradition in your household and coming back week after week. It means a lot to me. And being a part of this community, be sure to come by next week. If you guys haven't, if you can. I know it's Friday. A lot of people are getting off work. They're settling in with their families, trying to make dinner, that kind of stuff. But if you are able to come by on Friday night, 7 to 9 p.m. and Tuck Discord, please do. Just say hi. Like to hear from you and hear what's going on in your week. And that's it, everybody. Good night. Shalom.